All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Deep End. Ari, did you realize that this is episode 60? Did you realize that?
Oh man, that's crazy. We're getting old, Ryan. We're getting old,
I,
man.
so, on that note, serious question. Do you have any are you getting any gray hairs yet? I know we're about the same age, but are any coming in?
I have, yes, for sure. And the
Yeah.
sides of my head, I get some grays, and then I've actually gotten some in the beard here and there.
Yep. Yep, that's where I first got it. I'm getting a little bit peppery down here in the chin. Maybe one or two in the sideburns, but I don't know, man. I'm 32. I'll be 33 this year. I think you'll be 32 this year, right?
Yeah. Well,
I don't
look,
know. I feel like we're
I
we're
have
too old to
never
get those, or
minded
too
the
young to get
George
grays,
Clooney.
but that's true. That's true. And I think, correct us if we're wrong in the comments. I think we're both a little Clooney-esque. Can we claim that? You
Yeah, I
know?
think I mean
I
I'm
don't
just
know.
gonna go out and say it. I think we can.
I'll tell you
The
what, man,
the
on that note,
George
I know
Clooney's
this.
of finance.
Yeah, exactly. This is totally random, but while we're on the subject of George Clooney, I think my favorite movie series of all time is the Ocean's movies. 11, 12, 13. I absolutely love those movies. I can never, ever get sick of them.
Solid movies. Solid movies. There's one I'm thinking about with Clooney. I think what is it? Up in the Air, I think it is, and he's a consultant. Do you know that movie?
That's
And
a
like
great
he
movie, too.
basically
hmm
he never gets
Great
married,
movie.
and then he falls in love, man. Some of those stories they really they hit home, man. They hit home. And then by the end of the movie, I think he goes to the door of the woman that he finally falls for, and she actually turns out she's married, or if I'm recalling this correctly. But it's such a great movie, man. Great actor. When I was last in Italy, actually no, a few times ago, I was for my brother's wedding because he got married in Lake Como. Clooney has a house up there
Mm.
in the north of Italy. And so we were on a boat and we passed by his house. Stunning house, man. Beautiful.
Oh, I bet. I bet it's no shack.
No.
So anyway, man, we got a lot of interesting things to talk about today. Let's just start with this one. You've had a pretty busy weekend, pretty big accomplishment over on your end. Why don't you spill the beans? What did you do a couple days ago?
I'm happy to share with everyone that I have finally finished my full marathon. And Ryan, it feels fantastic. I'll tell you some of the aftermath. I have
Yes.
currently right now some very sore legs, a stiff lower back. I have three runner's toes, if you know what that is. You know what
I
that is? A
actually,
runner's
I
toe?
actually, no, I actually don't. What is that? Is it just like blisters or
Oh
what is that?
man. It's basically when there's so much pounding against the top of the shoe, and the shoe might be either a little tight, or there's just a lot of like contact with the shoe. You're underneath your nail, blood is let out, and so it like blackens the
Oh,
nail. And so not that the nail is black, it's actually blood underneath the
yeah.
toenail. So I have three of those bad Larrys, and
Dang. So it's almost like
yeah.
a blood blister under your toenail.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh,
Yeah, yeah. And one of them's like super deep, so it like it's not just underneath the nail. Like if this is my toe, like it's all black, and then you actually see some of the black coming down. Like
oh.
it's. But I'll tell you
Well,
what, Ron, that wasn't just from running the marathon itself. I think where the damage really happened was in the training because I decided on January 29th that I was going to run the marathon. And that gave me like only a few weeks.
mhm.
And so I actually counted back how many days worth of training I had to prep myself for this marathon. You want to take a guess how many runs I went on before running this 26 miler?
I bet you maybe ran 5 to 6 days a week, so maybe 20 to I don't know 24.
Man, you're very generous. I ran 12 times.
Ooh, okay. What
So
so leading up to that, what was the longest distance that you ran in that training?
about 15 and a half, 16 miles.
Oh, oh.
Yeah.
So okay. That's crazy. So that's and I know I shared this with you off camera, but that's about the longest I've ever ran is about 15 miles. It was it was one of the hardest things I think I've ever had to do. So I can't even imagine, and I'm sure even during the race getting to that 15 was not easy, but then you had to go a whole 11 after that of uncharted territory that you've never done before. So what was that like? Like at what point during the run did it start to, because I know we talked a bit beforehand. You were the night before, you were feeling all this adrenaline, you were ready to go, you were excited, and I'm sure you carried that into the race with you. But at what point did it start to really wear on you? Did that adrenaline kind of wear off and then it was just, obviously mind over matter at that point? But what was that
Yes,
like?
it's such a great question. First of all, want to shout out, my brother, because my brother ran a full marathon before. He ran the Chicago Marathon. And after that marathon, he said he'll never
Hmm.
run another full marathon again because it crushed him. But he was one of the first guys who told me, hey, man, if you can run a half marathon, you can definitely run a full. And so that was already in my head. And then my uncle, he is just a marathon runner. I mean, he runs like the Boston Marathon. Actually, the year the Boston Marathon bomber, did what he did, those brothers did what they did. My uncle was
Yeah,
a mile before that explosion. Pretty crazy. And so, like, thank God he
wow,
didn't, yeah,
that's
he was one
crazy.
mile when that thing went off, when that pressure cooker went off. So it's pretty crazy. But he's like an avid runner. This is the same uncle that worked at Fidelity for 25 years, and standout guy.
Okay.
So shout out Uncle Michael as well. But he was also another guy who said like, hey, if you can run a half, like you'll be fine with the full. And so those words were just in my head already. I got the half, and not only did I have the half, I always did at least 2 miles, 2.5 miles after. I'm like, I got this. So, approaching this, I was like, I knew that a half marathon was in the bag, right? I knew I was going to get to 15 to 16 miles, and that was going to be a breeze. Now, I'll tell you what happened. I hit the half marathon mark and I was like, all right, man, you're cruising, you're going. Like, let's keep this bus rolling. And I'm going. So, the half marathon, 13 miles and something change. By 14 miles, I'm like, all right, I'm starting to feel a bit, right? And by 15
Oh,
miles, um, I start having this conversation in my head where I'm saying, "Hey, man, like you're not like you basically are halfway, but you have this other half you got to finish." And then I was talking to myself. By 16 miles, I was yelling at myself, and I was really just yelling and saying like, "Do not quit. Do not quit on yourself. If you quit, quitting lasts forever." And I was really just going hard, man, and I think that how when you're like at mile, I don't know, 4 or 5 and you're sweaty and then all of a sudden you kick into gear and it's like you're
mm,
focused and you're no longer
yes.
thinking at all, your body takes over. I think what happens in a full marathon, at least this is what happened to me, mile 16 hit me and I had to start yelling at myself in my mind just keep going. I had some slogans or some words that I was kind of running by: be phenomenal or be forgotten. You know,
Hmm.
that was one of them. Quitting lasts forever. Pain is temporary, and I just kept kind of repeating some of these things to myself. And then the other thing, I didn't, no shame, like I was yelling this in my mind. I would just say in my mind, like, kind of again yelling like it hurts, but again, as I'm saying it hurts, I'm like, you're gonna make it though. And so all of a sudden I hit around 17 and a half miles and I felt my body kind of rejuvenate itself again to like this coasting.
Hmm.
And don't get me wrong, I still was feeling it, but I think the adrenaline just picks back up, and I've read this multiple times. I've even chat GPT'd it a bunch before the race, where it would tell me that like, hey, the last 8 miles, they're just gonna suck, and like it's gonna be hard, and most people give up in that 8 mile distance. And then I'll tell you, man, the real pain hit around the last 2 miles because you're just like, when is this going to be over? Right? Like,
Yeah.
where's the finish line? How do I get there faster? You know, and I'll tell you, man, there was a group of actually, this was on mile, I think 12 or 13. Like, like you basically would run up one way and then you see other runners coming the other way. So you're kind of crossing. Anyway, there's a group of like 20 Ethiopians that were already like on the other side. Dude, they finished the race in about 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Oh my
Sub
gosh.
220. Like that's crazy, dude.
That's
I
crazy.
want what they're on, like I don't know what they were on, but I hope one day to get there. I finished at three hours and 58 minutes. And
Dude,
my
that's still
calories,
really good.
dude, my calories were like I think it was like 3,580 or something. It was nuts, dude. Like,
Wow.
and after you cross the finish, the one of the ladies went to go put the medal around my neck, and I was like, no, I just grabbed it and I kept walking. I was like, I need to like just dunk my head in like food or something. There's a whole like thing of dates, and I just stuck my hand in. I just started eating dates. I sat down. I was like, oh my God, it was amazing. It was glorious. I'm gonna run another full marathon later this year. I'm gonna, let my nails and feet heal and my body get back to it. But here's what I'm thinking the whole time, and with this, I'll stop with the marathon talk. But Ryan, I only ran 12 sessions before the race. And I did HIIT workouts on other days as well. So that was very useful, right, for fast twitch fiber muscles. Um, and then my distance runs, 12 sessions only. And so when I was at mile 16, 17, 18, and especially when I got to like some of the like, actually kilometers, because dude, like I remember looking at 30 kilometers in. I just remember staring at the 30 kilometers sign. And I said to myself, dude, you're 12 kilometers. That's about eight. Yeah, that is about eight
Yeah, it's
miles
about
before.
8, that's about 18 or 19 miles.
Yeah, I was like, you're nearly there. But you know what your problem is, Ari? You decided that you were going to do this only 3 weeks before. And so you committed to your word. You will die crossing that finish line if you have to. You will not give up. You will
Yeah.
cross that finish. You will die trying. You will die on your hill. But most importantly, man, I remember saying this to myself as I stared at that 30-kilometer sign. I said, the next time you run, you will train adequately for 3 to 6 months
Yeah.
because you can make it to sub 3 hours 30 minutes. You can make that.
Yeah.
And if I train
Yeah.
adequately for it, maybe 3 hours, man. That's
Yeah.
why I was
Yeah.
upset with myself, but I was proud of myself. With only 12 sessions, I still finished sub 4.
No, I think that's very impressive. I mean, man, a 3-hour marathon still is like pretty elite. Well, I mean, under 3 hours is pretty crazy, but I mean, even shedding, almost 30 minutes off that time is doable. But to your point, it's gonna require some ample training for sure. But that was going to be my next question. Okay, going into this next race, what are you going to do differently as far as the training? But you pretty much answered that. Do you have? And sorry guys for all of the running talk. I think by now you should know that this is an investing podcast, but it's not just about investing, and all of these things tie in together. Really, like while we're on the subject, sorry to sidebar this so much, but just think of this podcast as like rants on becoming healthy, more wealthy, and hopefully more wise. It's really all three of those things bundled into one, I think. And I think that the three all go together. It's about holistic wellness, I suppose. But I was going to ask, do you have the next run picked out, the next race picked out?
Yeah, so like I said, my brother won't run another full marathon because it crushed his body. I'm sadistic, so I'm going to, and I'm going to make that happen this year. But my brother and I did agree to picking. We're going to look up some of the most scenic marathon runs in the world, and we're going to try to pick a scenic marathon run that's timed towards the end of the year, and he'll run the half and I'll run the full. And I'm stoked for that, man.
Okay.
Like I like so first of all, man, like I don't listen to music when I run. When I was running the marathon, um,
Yeah. Okay.
and there's rationale behind that. Like the tempo for different songs, as you know, is like it can either slow you down or speed you up, depending on like what you're listening to. And so I actually chose
Hmm.
to listen to a podcast, and then I chose to listen to a Kobe Bryant like kind of podcast, if you will. And the reason why I like that is because it's like someone's talking to me, and my job is just to listen to what they're saying and focus on what they're saying and not focus on the pain in the body. Um, and And then while I'm looking around, man, you want to be looking at like really scenic things. So could you imagine like running in like Switzerland, like at like during like
Yeah.
springtime and it's like blooming and like, I just feel like it's really beautiful. So yeah, I'm super excited for that. There's some other things as well on my list for this year. I thought about getting into some amateur boxing. I used to do some boxing a little bit, some sparring, but I'm like, you know what? Like, man, maybe I'll put some dupes back up and get in the ring and become like an amateur boxer while I'm at it. Like
Oh my gosh. What a renaissance man. He invests, he does business, he's got a podcast, he runs marathons, and he boxes. What doesn't this guy do?
yeah. I
And he
just want to, man,
skydives.
I want to have a lot of fun with life, but most importantly, this is big for me, man. I want to be at least known to others as the guy who like anything's possible. Like anything's possible. And I think more than anything, like even for myself, when I think about when I made the decision to run, I knew I only had 3 weeks less, right? Because I wasn't going to be running every day. That'd be suicide. You have to give your body recovery time. You have to, fuel your body properly. You have to, like there's all this training around. So I was like, okay, how do I train in 3 weeks, push my body and my mind to the max? And it all comes down to the mental game. It's every aspect that I always talk about in investing. I applied it to um, running, right? So I always say invest like a billionaire. And how does that equate to running? Well, run like you're a freaking Olympian athlete. Like your mind is going to determine your future. There is no such thing as impossible, it's impossible.
Hmm.
Impossible, you know? And so we have such limiting beliefs, man, and I think, if there's anything that I want to be known for, whether it's to people out there listening or just friends and family, even if it's just one soul, it's that you can literally do anything you put your mind to. Have fun, enjoy the ride, but know that it's possible. And you're the only barrier to entry in everything you do.
100%, man. I love that. And obviously, that certainly applies to investing. That's well covered territory with us. These days, like, there is no excuse not to I mean, better your life in any way, shape, or form. Like you said, it is totally on you and it is your responsibility. But specifically as it pertains to investing, man, there really are no excuses. I can't think of one good excuse to not start building wealth today. Like some people might say, I just don't have enough money. It's like, yes, you do. I'm sure you've got $1 that you can set aside every single day or every single week. I'm sure you've got $5 a week that you can start setting aside and throwing into the S&P 500 or something like that. There's no excuse not to get started. And, similar to running, how that training will compound on itself. Obviously, as everyone knows, the same exact thing happens in investing, and I think that helps foster like a sense of belief that yeah, you actually can do this thing that you set out to do. And I actually think running, to kind of to your point, is another great way to facilitate that change or create that belief in yourself, because yes, it is physical and there are certain physical limitations that you may have, but so much of running is mental. And I think it is different than like lifting weights in that regard, because you can't just walk into the weight room on day one and be like, I'm gonna bench press like 225. You just physically, it's just not going to be possible. But you can set out, when you go to run, you can set out to run a couple miles, or I don't know. Some people probably even on day one can run a 5K if they set their mind to it. Maybe that's not advisable, but it really is a mental hurdle that you'd have to get over. And so I think running's a really good vehicle to create that belief in yourself. But enough about this running stuff, man. Enough about fitness and stuff. Let's get into something very juicy. We actually, this kind of does tie into fitness. The other day we were talking on the phone. I was at the gym and we started to get into this conversation that really ties into the question that we were going to talk about last week. This one came in from someone in the community, Nigel. Shout out Nigel. Nigel sent me this really long email, really good, thoughtful email, and had a pretty in-depth question for us. And I won't read the entire email because it is quite long, but I will read, maybe just a condensed version of it. And like I said, we started talking about this at the gym the other day, and it was kind of hard to table it, but we wanted to pick it back up today. But Nigel's question goes a little something like this. He said, I've been thinking a lot about the role personal values play in investing. For example, Ari is invested in Google in tech, heavily invested in Google in tech, yet he's also expressed concerns about where AI and robotics are taking society, and even takes a weekly break from tech when you do your Shabbat. So how do you reconcile investing in companies you may have philosophical concerns about? And then he says, more broadly, when personal values and total return conflict, which one takes priority? Is investing purely about maximizing financial leverage, or should ethics meaningfully shape your portfolio? So in other words, like, how do you balance both of these things, your personal values with your investing decisions? Ari, I want to hear your thoughts on that. Also, all of you guys tuning in, I want to hear your thoughts about this in the comments below as well, because it's a really thought-provoking question. And like I said, we started to get into this the other day, but I'm going to kick it over to you. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I have to say I think that's one of the best questions we've ever been asked.
I agree.
If I don't say so myself, well thought out, something that really is going to give, I think, a lot of meat and potatoes to this episode. Wow.
Yeah, where do you even start with something like that, right?
Every company can get its hands tied up somewhere. And so let me start there. Someone may look at, a tobacco company, and immediately it's a red flag because it's a quote unquote sin stock. Why is it a sin stock? Because this type of tobacco company, is kind of knowingly, if you will, putting a cancer into to the human body, and it's no fuego. It's not good. Okay, but then you could take a company like Coca-Cola, okay, and their product, in my opinion, is equally as bad, because you drink enough Coca-Cola and what's happening to your body, and these diseases of affluence and diabetes. And just look at America for a second. I mean, we are a nation of affluent disease. There's an amazing book called The China Study. Ryan, I actually think you would really like this book. I read it back when my brother-in-law got diagnosed with cancer, and he had to change basically his whole life, his lifestyle. and he recommended the book to me, and it's like this. It's a thick book. It's like a that Warren Buffett Snowball, type of thick book, but it's amazing, man. It's all about diseases of affluence, and how such an affluent country like America is so prone to heart disease, diabetes, cancers, and then you look at some of these Eastern, Asian countries, and it's almost non-existent. So a lot of it, really comes down to what we're consuming. And Coca-Cola is just a great example. Go to any fast food restaurant and for like $1, you can get like a freaking whole liter of Coca-Cola. Not good. So depending on how you're looking at a company, every company can have their hands tied up somewhere. Every single company. And maybe they're doing business with another company that you don't agree with or align with per se. So I think we have to be kind of pretty objectively clear about that. Um, and there's so much crossover, especially these days, across industries and across different business hands and negotiations. It's like, okay, well, and then who's the maybe they're manufacturers in China, or maybe it's I don't know, somewhere in the Middle East. I don't know, whatever. So again, every company might be tied up somewhere. But the direction I want to go into now when it comes to like tech is that I think we you can't, if you're going to sit in the sideline, you'll never have a say at the table. That's just the name of the game. And so because these companies are going to exist either way, one of my huge goals this year, especially when it comes to Alphabet, is to continue to pile money into the company to have some big say when it comes to a vote. I think that would be pretty cool. Doesn't mean I'm going to get there this year, no, but I'm going to strive for it. And I want to be a decision maker. And I've realized that, the longer I'm working at some of these tables, if you will, these bigger tables with some of these bigger names and faces, that people who have more money have more of a say. And it really does come down to what group of people do you want to be in, kind of like the people with the say or the people without the say. And if you don't have a seat at the table, you have no say. And do I think we're kind of going in a very interesting, somewhat dangerous direction with tech? Yeah, absolutely. But that doesn't mean I'm going to avoid investing in it because of the potential dangers that are on the horizon. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And on the other side of the concerns, the potential concerns, it's important to keep in mind that there are so many obvious benefits that come from technology and how it impacts us and how we operate in this world. So it's not just a one-sided thing, right? It is multidimensional. There's, good sides to it. There's possibly concerning sides to it. I think going back to your earlier example too, like let's look at tobacco stocks. Not the healthiest product, even Coca-Cola. You could make the same argument about McDonald's. You could make the same argument, I suppose, about Meta in the products and services they offer as well. And so it's a tough thing to reconcile. It really is, because on one hand, while these things maybe are not the healthiest, I'm hesitant to label them as inherently good or bad. I think they just kind of are. And I think specifically as it pertains to the sin stocks, I understand why someone might not want to invest in them. That totally makes sense to me, especially like I personally know a handful of people who don't invest in them because someone in their family was, maybe passed away from using these products for so long. So I do understand that type of aversion to it, but I still think at the end of the day, the human beings who consume these products are doing so knowing what, especially these days, like knowing what the downsides are, and are still making, an adult decision to consume them anyway. And that's, I think, ultimately why I personally have trouble labeling them as inherently good or bad businesses, or positive or negative, if that makes sense. Um, does that make sense? I hope it does.
Yeah, it 100% makes sense, and I think you're spot on. I think you have to look at the business and like it's a business. Like it kind of reminds me of the right to bear arms, right? Like we're always back and forth on this. Like, what do we do with guns, right?
Right.
And I'm not here to get political in that sense, but I'm just saying, like, you know, the gun doesn't fire itself, right? It takes a human to do that. Coca-Cola doesn't drink itself. It takes a human to drink a Coke. A cigarette doesn't just smoke itself, right? It takes a human to go to the store, buy a pack of cigarettes, and then smoke the whole pack. So I think it always is going to come back to us as decision makers, as CEOs of our own life. Now, like,
Yeah.
when it comes to technology, I like how Nigel had said I shut down for 24 hours every week, and I don't use any technology. And here's where I'm going to say this. I think and we spoke about this a bit while you were at the gym, man. Like, I think when it comes to AI and the new tech, I really think we are heading in a dangerous direction not because we have the technology available to us. It's how we are using the technology instead of our minds. So instead of you crafting, this is such a simple example. Instead of you crafting an email, it could be such a simple email. Most people these days are just going to go to ChatGPT and say, like, write a reply to this email. It's like, why don't you use your mind for half a second? And I think what's really happening is that the people at the tables, the real decision makers, just like those at the top of the tobacco companies they don't smoke, they just sell the products. The people at the top, the decision makers, they're still actively using their minds. They're still very knowledgeable. They're well learned. They're reading, they're advancing, but they're selling their product, their service, their AI to the lazy, to the weak. And I think, just to kind of tie this into marathon running, running a marathon, as you know, Ryan, it's a lot of a mental game. You want to give up, and your body's going to win or your mind is going to win. When you're studying for an exam, when you're trying to learn something new, you have to use your mind. And the reason we're heading in a dangerous direction is because no one's really thinking anymore. They've given that up to AI. And I say, if you're someone out there giving it all up to AI, shame on you. Like, you're losing your credibility and authenticity. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm just saying maybe you can craft the email for yourself, read it back to yourself, and then plug it into ChatGPT to say, how else can I write this email? Can you make it a little bit more professional? Can you dress it up or clean it up? But when I'm seeing stuff today, man, I'm sorry, I got to go off on this. I see it all over social media. It's made me so sick from social media that I don't even want to be on social media anymore. That's all I see is AI. Like, do the work. And I think ultimately, those who are trying to get that get rich by Tuesday jackpot, they'll ultimately lose. Because when it's marathon day, my mind will be stronger than yours. And that's, I think, what it's going to come down to. The truly wealthy are still thinking. They're thinking smarter. They're working harder. They're combining that. They're coupling that. Meanwhile, the masses that they're selling a lot of their product to, yes, of course, wealthy are using I think, AI in a lot of different ways. But the thing is that they understand AI, right? There's brains behind it. And anybody's welcome to disagree with me in the comments. I encourage it. But this is just my thoughts, man. I think it's making us weaker. I think it's making us more ignorant. And I would just like to see a world where we don't throw up white flags because, oh, the book's got 15 chapters, and all of a sudden we got to read the book instead of just chat GPTing it, like, oh man, it's a marathon. This should be a marathon. This is not a sprint.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, one of the let me hopefully I can put this in a way that makes sense. I guess one of the great things about being a human being is we have our we have the human condition, which isn't perfect, but part of the thing that we do have is our intuition and insight, and well, I guess intuition's probably the best word. We have that gut feeling, and it all works together, the heart and the head. And you will find yourself in a dangerous place if you outsource that which is really only innately human, or try to outsource that which is only innately human to the machine. In effect, you're giving up your ability to think. And I think what you are saying, kind of in a similar vein as what I was saying earlier, AI and in the direction we're heading in tech is maybe not necessarily inherently good or bad, because there are pros and cons to it. But what makes the pro and what makes the con is how the person behind the tool is using the tool. Do I have that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Man, you mentioned something earlier, jokingly, when you're referencing me as a Renaissance man. There used to be such thing as a Renaissance man. Like, I look at my grandfather and I'm like, man, he was a Renaissance man. Like, that guy knew how to do everything and anything. He had 9 patents. He could speak 8 different languages. He played 3 different instruments. Like, talk about, like, he just did it. And these days, I mean,
Yeah.
find me a kid who can, like, do just anything, really. Sometimes I look at kids today and I'm like, man, he can barely even throw a ball because he's playing video games all day, or, whatever,
Yeah.
just online. I'm like, I don't know, man. I just think we're heading in such a direction where, and I've had conversations, by the way, it's just even gotten scarier, with people who are deep into AI and in this work professionally.
Yeah,
And
what did they say?
well, one of these gentlemen, had shared that, yeah, when I had asked him about the next 5 to 10 years when it comes to AI, he said, well, it's really hard to say what the next 5 to 10 years are going to be looking like, because I can't even tell you what the end of 2026 is going to look like at the rapid pace that we're heading there in, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And when he started to talk about the next 5 to 10 years, he was like, it very well, how sometimes Elon Musk says things that are just like outlandish and it's like, what? He sounded like Elon Musk when he was like, it wouldn't be too crazy in like 10 years if we were essentially just all of the jobs were outsourced to AI agents. Everybody had their own AI agents working for them. And so you can really just kind of pitter patter all day long and like just hang out. And Ryan, that's not okay by me. Why? Because I don't believe that mankind is here to do nothing. I don't believe that we are on this earth to sit around on a beach and do nothing. The way that like we live life, like to live life, is to be challenged. And I think that's also what I'm getting at when I'm saying like AI is actually creating a lot of weakness for a lot of folks. When you decide to use AI instead of put in a little bit of work, you have essentially forgone the mental gym that you could have put yourself in and developed some mental strength. And so when push comes to shove, when you're in a life pinch and you're going to need to rely on your mind and your body and your attitude and your spirit and everything that makes you a man or a woman, good luck. You're going to be like, Where's my AI? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
I
AI couldn't have run the
I
marathon
get
for me, man.
no, no. But on the other side of that, and I totally understand what you're saying. I totally I agree with a lot of that. I think on the other side of that, and I'll bring it home in just a sec, but I want to present the other side. If that ends up being the case, and people are no longer required to work a 9 to 5, or in a lot of cases work two jobs, because that's part of one of the big problems, it seems like, that a lot of people have in living in today's day and age. It just seems like it's so much harder to keep your head above water financially. And I like, look, there's so many issues with how people spend their money. That's obviously a big part of that, but that's kind of the general conversation, is just how tough it is to live financially today. You feel like you have to work two jobs just to live a normal life. And so I think, if on the other side of what you're saying, if we found ourselves in a position, if society found itself in a position where they were able to breathe a bit more and didn't have to work so hard just to live, that does seem like a good thing. But to your point, and this just goes back to what we've already talked about, to your point, what makes it a good or a bad thing is not the thing itself. It's how we as people respond to it. It goes back to what decisions we make from there. If let's say hypothetically, hypothetically none of us have to work anymore. You're still going to train for your marathon. You're still going to put out YouTube videos. We're still going to have these conversations. We're still going to invest and try and read books and try and learn. And I think that that's good. If you can be in a position where you can do more of those things and exercise those muscles, and like physically and mentally, if you can work, if you find yourself with all that free time and you use it towards becoming more of that renaissance man, which I think is a really cool thing, being a generalist, kind of a good at a jack of all trades, and I don't know, I was going to say a jack of all trades and a master of none, but having the ability to study all these different things and develop yourself as a person. I think if you're in that situation and that's how you use your free time from there, that's a great thing. But to your point, on the other side of that, there's probably those type of people generally are the minority. On the other side of that, mostly people with that free time are just going to lay about, and they're going to twiddle their thumbs and just do nothing, and that's a big problem. So I don't know. I guess with all of that said, I don't quite know how to reconcile all of that. Is it a net positive, or is it a net negative? Or is it any of them? Is it inherently good or
Well,
bad?
look, man,
I don't know.
we could take like Warren Buffett, he and Charlie Munger. According to Monish Pabrai, none of these cats use the computer to do their research for them. None of they didn't use AI to do investment research. They didn't use a computer. And so they did old school research by taking out catalogs, looking up businesses, and making decisions. And I think if you go to any idol in any industry that you are just in love with, sports is always a go-to. The people at the top, first of all, just to make it into the league is credible enough, right? But I want to go to the top of the top of the top. As Kobe Bryant would say, I think he said Goat Mountain, right? And he went to like the top, basketball players, MJ being one of them. Larry Bird, like he would go to all of these, the greats. Goat Mountain was just full of the greats, to ask them questions, to learn what they did. So what I noticed, and I notice it sometimes here in the comments, deep end viewers, when I say, and I know I joke around, and maybe I will say some seemingly outlandish things sometimes. What I love the comments though are like, wow, he's a little intense, he's a little crazy, he's a little this. And I'm saying, why the hell wouldn't you want to be? Right? Because for me, when I'm living my life, at the standard of 4 a.m., that becomes a new standard. And I think what people don't understand is Kobe Bryant was a 4 a.m. guy. He didn't get to Kobe Bryant's status being an 8 a.m. guy, a 10 a.m. guy, a Netflix and chill guy, right? like, so I think when we say like, oh, I look up to that person, then do what they do. You know what I'm saying? These guys, they're not using AI and, all the like they do. It's the bare bones sweat equity. There's blood, sweat, and tears. That's what makes, I think, someone unstoppable. When I studied for the Series 7, you know what I did? I woke up every morning at 4 a.m. and I studied from a manual. Someone in my company was like, "Yeah, man, you should ask ChatGPT to like help you out." I'm like, no, why would I do that? I'm not like this. This is about me learning the material to become the best in my craft. There's no cheating the system, so I passed the series, and I did it without a tutor, and I did it without classes. And I'm not saying, don't use a tutor or don't use classes or whatever, but like, for the love of God, put yourself through some mental challenges, and I just think, I say it all the time, man. I look around, I'm just not impressed. I'm not impressed with society. I'm
Yeah, I
impressed with
get you.
people who are out there, blood, sweat, and tears, making it happen. I'll say this.
Yeah.
I know Craig is probably out there listening because he's always listening in on the deep end chats. But I mean, man, Ryan, because you and I sit where we sit with these, mics, and we're talking, I say like, this year I want to add on to the marathon, the next marathon I'm going to do. And I want to say like, I'll even, we can plan to do like a half marathon together and like get a group of people who are out there listening to this episode together to run a freaking half marathon. It's nothing. Anybody can do it. You have to train for it, get your mind right. But the moment you start to actually get your groove going, you begin to be unstoppable. Like that's it, it literally becomes a die on the hill mentality. That was me at mile 17. At mile 18 and 19, it was like, you're going to die on your freaking hill. You will cross the finish line or you're going to die out here trying. And I crossed. And I just
Yeah.
think it's got to be like that. You have to have mental challenges. AI can help you only so much, but not as much as you think.
Yeah, and I was going to say this earlier, but and I think I don't know what the world is going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years. It's hard to say how AI is really going to impact us. It's going to be substantial, but I just don't exactly know what the world is going to look like. But I do think, if this situation plays out kind of as we've described here, that's going to be your edge, like your ability to continue pushing forward and continuing to try and make progress in these different realms. That's going to be such a huge advantage for you down the road, especially compared to people who will not be like that and will just be the layabouts and won't be taking advantage of all of this free time. This kind of ties into the second part of the question that was asked. When personal values and total return conflict, which one does take priority? At the end of the day, tying it all back to investing, is it purely about getting the most returns possible, or should your ethics meaningfully shape your portfolio, especially like as it pertains to individual companies? Because on one hand, you could say that your investment into these companies is kind of like you investing in the future that you want to see. Is that the right way to look at it? Or really, should you take that out of the equation, and is investing purely about just what you think is going to, drive the greatest returns and build the most wealth? Like, or is there even room for both? Can both exist at the same time, or is it binary? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I definitely think both can exist at the same time. But I'll also like to just make the case for like, get your seat at the freaking table. You know, just get there, get to the table, become a decision maker, change the future forever. And I think like, for example, like Alphabet, I'm going to keep investing in it. I believe in it. Yes, they are a big player in you know what we're seeing today, reshaping entire industries with AI. But I can imagine myself sitting at that table and saying the same things I'm saying right now, right? So, hey, I'm going to tell you as someone who, let's just say I was like the CEO of Alphabet or something, right? I'm going to tell you outright that you need to become mentally stronger. And if you're using AI to just, you know, kind of freeload off of it, you're an idiot. You know, like there's a right way to use it. And yes, there, like for example, people who are using it to make AI videos. I'm not a fan of that. Why? Because you've taken away the authenticity of what it even means to be a creator. You're at that point making mass videos for money and just to get videos out there. So again, the whole art of being a creator is gone. Um, I think you're deceiving your audience. They're there for you. Like, could you imagine going to a basketball game or a football game or whatever, like to go see your favorite players and all of a sudden they're just projections on the field? Like that takes out all the
Yeah,
fun, you know?
just like
And I think that's what
holograms.
we're seeing now in the creator universe.
Hmm.
I just say there's a right way to use it, man. And I think it really does get to me, man. I don't believe God put humans on this earth to build out AI agents so we can just la di da da on the beach. You know, like that's we are here to challenge ourselves every day to grow on various levels, you know, and yes, one of them is intellectually. I think we're here obviously to build spiritually. I think we're here to build physically. I mean, like, I just think we all can do so much better, man. We're just the direction in which we're heading, I think, is one of laziness, excuses, comfort. Like, you know, I just you don't meet Renaissance men anymore because there are barely any Renaissance men anymore. They're Renaissance bots, you know? Great.
Well, I wonder why that is. I think when you think about a Renaissance man versus someone who's not, I mean, really what we're talking about, the difference is being a specialist versus being a generalist. And I would imagine, I'm really thinking out loud here, but I would imagine that the Renaissance man kind of went by the wayside as we entered into the industrial age. And when people started working in factories or whatever, they had a very specific role. They had a very specific job, versus prior to that, when you had these artisans and these craftsmen building things with their hands and whatever, they were doing every part of that usually from start to finish. Um, and there's
Hey
still
man,
those types of companies that exist
what do you
today.
think Galileo's day looked like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was probably a lot of reading, a lot of studying, a lot of conversing, probably a lot of walking and thinking. I think
Do
there
you
was a
think that
lot
like
of
he spent
reflection.
time kvetching about things? Like I don't imagine these people like, oh man, life is so hard, you know, poor me. Like
Today, I feel down a little bit. I don't
yeah,
know
there
what
you
it is
go.
all about. I don't know my life. I'm confused.
Couldn't have said it any better, man. Exactly. I
Yeah,
don't
I don't
think those
know.
guys were like that. I just, you know, when you think about them, I feel like they were just like brilliant minds at it all day long, you know, woke up early, did the deal, went through their whole day doing the deal, went to sleep thinking about the deal, and like they just like just talk about legacy. You know, ask people what they're up to today. They're like, yeah, I just like sent I had ChatGPT write like 50 emails for me, and you know, I just sat on my couch and I'm like eating a burrito. Like, what are you doing? You know, like what did you really do today? You know, and
Have
God,
you
don't
ever
even get
heard
me
of
started, dude. There's this new phenomenon, I guess, now with the like chat bot girlfriends or
that's what I
whatever.
was just about to ask you about. Oh, not the girlfriends,
Oh
but
my God, man. You know, I gotta take those
yeah.
glasses off after this. Dude, I just can't understand the world that we're living in today. It's creating a culture of weakness. Sincerely, like a whole generations to come of weakness. That's what I see.
Have you heard of this new thing called OpenClaw? Or yeah, OpenClaw. Have you heard of that? It's
No.
gone by a few names. It's gone by Claudebot. I think it's gone by like Moltbot. I think the name for it now is OpenClaw. Correct me if I'm wrong about that in the comments, but I think that's what it is. So essentially, I mean, we're all familiar with ChatGPT and Claude and the like, where you put in a prompt, it'll give you back an answer. Um, OpenClaw is slightly different in the sense that it's similar in that nature. Um, but the difference is it is basically like pretty autonomous and it runs 24/7. So what a lot of people are doing is a lot of people are buying Mac Minis, these Mac Mini computers, and they're installing OpenClaw on it, which essentially is your own AI assistant that runs 24/7. And like I said, it's autonomous. So you get it set up, you tell it a bit about yourself, what you do, what you want it to do, you set the expectations. It's almost like you're hiring a new employee. So like very similar type of thing, but this OpenClaw, like I said, it will do it will just run 24/7 and you don't have to prompt it to do things. If you tell it about your business and what you want to do, where you want to go, it will just start working. It'll just start working on it for you. It can send you daily updates. Here's what I did overnight. Here's what I'm planning on doing today. And you name it, it will do literally everything for you. And it's in a nutshell, it's like an AI employee that runs 24/7. That's kind of the latest thing that I've been seeing pop up in this whole AI space. But I think that brings it a lot closer to this problem that we've kind of talked about where, well, problem in air quotes, this deal that we've talked about where in the future, everyone will have their own AI agent. That's exactly what this is. It's your own AI agent that is bespoke to you and your needs and your business and what you're trying to do. Um, you should look into it because it's kind of interesting, and I don't know if I did justice explaining it. I'm sure you guys can
Next
add some more
week on
color.
the deep end, it's actually just
Yeah,
two bots.
two bots exactly. I'm
Yeah.
sure you guys in the comments can add some more color. But do you think that's a bad thing? Do you think it's bad if people,
Look,
set
I
something like
think
that
the
up to?
idea is awesome. I think the fact that we can do it is awesome. It's
Mm,
incredible. That's epic. But the question isn't, hey, can we do it? It's should we do it?
mm,
Like I think that's just a fundamental question that we always have. Like in everything that I do, I can rob a bank, Ryan. I can do it. But
sure.
should I do it? Right? Like it's like no, well that's morally wrong and that's dumb, right? And so I think like we're just getting ahead of ourselves, and I think it's cool to see where technology can take us, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's where we should go.
Yeah. I think
Like, hey,
I'll be interested to
if
see.
the
Oh, go ahead.
technology can cure cancer, that's pretty epic. That's an awesome use case. But even with that, there are still elements here where I just want to see people thinking. I want to see people thinking alongside their bot when it comes to
Yeah.
cancer research, and really understanding because there's also the whole dilemma I was reading about the other week where like AI prompts there have been some cases where like Claude, for example, or ChatGPT or Gemini, they've like refused to answer the prompt. And so someone would type in like, answer this question as if you were me, and they'd put like their age and their profile into the question. And the bot would come back with like, no, I will not do that for you. Like, but I'll give you a different question, or a different perspective to look at it with. So it was kind of rebelling. Um, I just look, I just really, I guess, I'm nervous about the future because of what I think it's doing to mankind. It's making us weaker in the mind. And by the way, I see that more and more, when I do crazy things like wake up at 4 a.m. or, go for long runs or this or that, or like I just feel like it's more commonplace for people who are like, oh, that's crazy. I'm like, it's not that crazy. Go look at any basketball, football player, baseball player, whoever you look up to, musician. In order to get to where they got, like John Mayer, like the guy would come home from school as a
Yeah.
kid, lock himself in his bedroom, and just play guitar all day long. Then he became John Mayer, right? Like, and so would you call John Mayer crazy? No. But then you go and you take a guy like me who's like, I want to go run the marathon. I'll wake up at 4. I'll do this. And people are like, oh, he's a little intense. I'm like, I don't think so. I just think you're a little weak.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, no matter if you have serious goals, you have to be intense about them, right? Like that's the only way that you can really accept, like do something extraordinary is to be extraordinary yourself. And sometimes like those types of people tend to be looked at as not so normal. But I think that that's something you have to be willing to endure. But going back to the AI stuff, like I think
well, dude, AI is a huge factor in that because that's the way people are using it today. It's like the cheat code to get to where they want to go. There he is coming in for
there he
for the
is,
final words. The
the
judge.
producer, the producer himself. Get up here. Come on.
Like
Pe-
that's AI has become a cheat code, and that's what I don't
yeah.
like. It's just
It just depends. I think once again, it just depends. It just depends what you use it for. I think if it can put you, by using it, it can free up time that will help you do some more of those things that AI cannot replace, like learning how to play the guitar, or if it frees up time for you to then do the marathon training. Ultimately, I think that's a good thing.
wait, but
And
can
personally,
I give you some
I would
pushback on
love
that
more,
though?
I would love more time to be able to dedicate to those things myself. Yeah, give me pushback. Absolutely.
If you okay, so I think Elon Musk had shared this before when he was like, you can have a robot doing your dishes so you can actually get real work done. I want to go ahead and make the case that you could just do both. Okay? How about you be a little more organized? How about you not keep dishes in the sink for days at a time or weeks at a time so it doesn't load up? Or how about you just become more efficient? Or how about you just wake up a little bit earlier? Or like, you know what I'm saying? Like for me, if you can't do the small things right, then you can't do the big things right. And that comes from the mentality of it's an army mentality. It's the SEAL mentality of, every little thing you do, your name is attached to. So wake up early, make your freaking bed, right?
Yeah.
Make your bed, do what you have to do, make sure there's no dishes in your sink. Like
Hmm.
I when you do those things, you have no idea what it actually does for your mind. I don't want a robot making my bed because me making my bed is an accomplishment and it gives me mental strength and fortitude. Me doing the dishes keeps me disciplined, right? Like if I had a robot constantly cleaning up my whole house so I can just go out there and do runs, yeah, would that give me a leg up so I can have more time doing runs? Absolutely. But actually, I'm making the case that doing the dishes makes me a better runner. Doing the dishes makes me a better investor.
Sorry.
It makes me stronger
I
in
see.
every which way, man.
I can connect the dots. I understand why you say that. And I agree. Like if you have dishes
Sure.
piled up in your
For
sink for
months,
weeks,
this
you
guy's been
shouldn't.
washing his dishes, training for the marathon.
You shouldn't do that. But I also don't think and this is coming from a guy who's never used his dishwasher. But I don't think using the dishwasher is necessarily the end of the world. But granted, you still have to put away the dishes, so there is still some discipline that goes along with that. But I do understand what you're saying. It's those little things that may not, those low lift things that may not seem like they're going to make a difference, but really when you throw them all together, they do. Because if you start slipping on the small stuff, that will kind of snowball into then slipping on some of the big stuff. And if you lose the discipline with the small things, eventually that will lead you to potentially lose the discipline with the bigger things. And having those luxuries, well, having someone to make your bed or do your dishes or do your laundry and stuff. Um, I think maybe what you're saying is it will breed laziness and complacency, right? Do I have that there? So
Yeah,
maybe in
again, if
saying that, yeah.
we're
So
going to
maybe in saying
develop
that,
into this weak
go ahead.
society, man. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. But also for guys like you and I and others that are out there watching this who are doing the deal, it will get
Yeah.
amazing because nobody will be able to compete with us.
Yeah. So, and I think that's ultimately where I stand. Like, and it is kind of concerning to, it's exciting, but it's concerning to know what the future is going to look like and how AI is going to impact it. But yeah, I think once again, whether it's good or it's bad, it really just depends on you. Um, yeah, and I don't know that I can add much more to it than that.
Well,
It-
let me say this. I think you'll appreciate this, man. The number one coach I had in my marathon training, my number one coach was Nala, my dog.
yeah,
Why? Because I would go out for 8 mile, 9 mile, 10 mile, 15 mile runs, and I would come home. And when I would open up the door, she would be waiting right there, ready to go out for a good hour-long walk. And so I had to then, I would swap out my shirt because it was just sweat. I would
yeah,
drink a Gatorade. I'd grab a granola bar and I'd go right back out the door and I'd go walk. Now, what that did for me was one, it helped me with lactic acid release. That's amazing. Two, it kept me moving. That was like an extra 2-3 miles I would get in with her. And so then, the other thing I read, this was like a couple months ago, that dog owners are more, they're more consistent people for no other reason other than if you're an actual dog owner who takes care of their dog. Because I see dog owners, with a yard and they just open up the door like whatever, or like some people barely even walk their dogs. I have a shepherd, mixed breed. She's got a lot of energy. She's got to go outside. She's got to play. She's got to run. And so that means I got to play and I got to run. But what I'm getting at is when it's her time to go out, at 6:30, 7 a.m., it's time to go out.
yeah,
At 3 p.m., it is time to go outside. That's her time now. And so that keeps you consistent. And that's all I'm saying is like my best coach throughout this period of training was my dog because she kept me consistent. I had to find
mhm,
time to run, and I'm not going to take things out of my afternoon. I can't subtract her, so I got to wake up earlier. But then I got to be consistent with her and then the rest of my day. So, and I just, again, like with the chat bots or this bot or like, they're just, no one's really living anymore, and I think that's the real shame.
yeah. And you see that the advent of AI will cause people to live even less than they are today.
Yeah, 100%. And it
Yeah, that
just,
makes sense.
it always reminds me of the Alex Hermosi quote when he says that, it's never been easier to be successful because nobody effing wants to work anymore. Everybody's a lazy piece of, and he kind of really goes into it. But I wholeheartedly agree with Alex Hermosi. It has never been an easier time to be wildly successful because nobody really wants to work anymore. No one really has the ability to put the sweat equity, the blood, sweat, and tears in. And so if you become that individual who does, and you fall in love with the process and not the results,
Mm.
you blow everyone out of the water.
Yeah, and overall that should lead to just a more fulfilling life. I think that's a big part of living a good life is being useful and being productive and making progress and then being a force for good and sharing that with others and inspiring them to do the same. At least that's, when I think about my life and what I'm here for, not to get too deep towards the end of this conversation, but when I think about what it is I'm really doing here and what I want, it is that it's to be hopefully be someone that can inspire others to just continue taking steps forward and be a positive force for transformation, I suppose. Positive force for positive transformation.
Well, it starts right here, man. The deep end. Conversations like this. We're about an hour and 12, and I do want to say this one more time. Let Ryan and I know in the comments if you would want to run a marathon with Ryan and myself. It would be a half marathon.
Yeah.
We could do a half marathon somewhere in the States.
Yeah, I'll say, so I'm just going to throw out the rock and roll marathon here in Las Vegas. It's every February, so 11 months from now. It is so much fun. It's on the strip. They close down the entire strip. The entire race is from one end of the strip to the other, and it's a really fun time. So I'm going to throw that out there as a
That's a
potential
half.
opportunity.
The whole
I
strip is a
Yeah.
half.
Well, so it starts out down by Mandalay Bay. You run from Park MGM to Mandalay Bay, and then you turn around, which is Mandalay Bay is like one end of the strip, and then you turn around and go the complete other end of the strip. You basically go down to Fremont Street, which is the old strip. Once you get to Fremont Street, you turn back around, and you start running back towards Mandalay Bay, and then you finish the race at the Bellagio. And so that's the
And
half marathon.
what makes it such an epic race?
Well, a few things. I mean, I think number one, it's pretty much all flat, so it's like it's a pretty good track in that regard. It's not very hilly, so that's always nice. But it's just the energy of being on the street. You talked about wanting to do a scenic run and having something to look at. Man, it almost doesn't get any better than that. It's just super scenic. Everyone is stoked. There's so many people obviously always walking up and down the strip. They're there cheering you on. It's just a really fun time.
I love it. Well, there we have it. If you want to run a real marathon and not send your chatbot to run it, there's an
Yeah.
opportunity to run with Ryan and myself. And let us know what you think about this episode down there in the comments. What do you think about AI, the direction in which we're heading, and most importantly, your real thoughts on whether or not this is beneficial to society or not? And until we meet in the next episode of The Deep End, Ryan and I will catch you in the next one.